I will reveal the truth of King Solomon's temple, and King Solomon's orrery machine, and its implications it had on King Solomon, and on Israel as a whole, and how Israel, and many other nations were set up to fail, by the Phoenician Empire. I don't need to go through the entire story, and, as a typologist, I have around 5 or 6 different ways to decode texts and allegory, so, in this instance, I will go through the story of King Solomon backwards, and not in the order of reading. The Bible has a problem. It likes to jump time and often will reference something that was previously said or a previous event, and sometimes the Bible will say something or state an event that will happen in the future, in the storyline. However, by going backwards, we get the points of interest first. But first to insert from the highly respected and approved translator. I believe the above to be the real purport of this passage, which the medieval translators not understanding, as it contains the technical terminology of cosmical sciences of which they had lost all that knowledge, transformed it into proper names. I am also satisfied the same blunder has been made in similar cases in many other passages of Scripture. I have, therefore, rejected the older versions entirely, and give the real purport of the Hebrew text, as arrived at by philological analysis. Solomon, in fact, understood what we now call the Copernican and Newtonian principles of astronomy and cosmogony. Then the king, and all the people with him, sacrificed sacrifices to the ever-living. But Solomon sacrificed as the thank offering, which was sacrificed to the ever-living, 22,000 oxen, and 120,000 sheep, by which the king and all the assembly of Israel dedicated the house to the ever-living. On the same day the king consecrated the open court which is before the house of the ever-living, for he offered the burnt offering and the bread offering, and the fats of the thank offering, for the brass altar which is before the ever-living was too small for the consumption of the burnt offerings and the bread offerings, and the fat of the thank offerings. Typology: the sacrifices of approximately 142,000 innocent animals. 120,000 sheep would approximately be around 144,000 gallons of blood. 22,000 oxen would approximately be around 441,200 gallons of blood. 3, that is approximately 585,200 gallons of blood. 4, an Olympic-sized swimming pool holds approximately 660,000 gallons of water, and blood is thicker than water, and would require more volume space. 5. Now you have an understanding of how much blood is present during the celebrations of King Solomon. Directly after the temple was completed by the Phoenician king, Hiram. For King Solomon had sent and fetched Hiram from Tsur. He was the son of a widow woman of the tribe of Naphtali, but his father was a native of Tsur, who was a fabricator in metals, and skillful in engineering, and in building, and the knowledge of all construction. He came to King Solomon, and designed all his works. He also made the 2 pillars of brass, each of 18 cubits high, with a cord of 12 cubits surrounding the 2 columns, and the 2 crowns of cast bronze made to place on the tops of the columns, the height of the one crown being 5 cubits, and the height of the other crown 5 cubits, made like network. He made great woven chains, for the crowns that were upon the heads of the columns. 7 for the first crown, and 7 for the other crown. Thus he made the columns with 2 stories of network, enclosing pomegranates, for the one, to cover the tiara which was on the top, and made the same for the tiara of the second. And the tiaras which were on the tops of the columns were made of lilies, of a height of 4 cubits, and the tiara on each column also rose from reticulated capitals. There were also 200 pomegranates in rows over the crowns of the 2. Then he set the columns in the court of the temple, and placed one column on the right side, and named it Firmness, Next he raised the other column on the left hand and named its speed. Last, over the top of the columns he placed the lilies, and completed his work over the columns. He also made 10 pedestals, of 4 cubits long, each pedestal and 4 cubits wide and 3 cubits high, and made these pediments with dovetails on them, and dovetailed them at the joinings. And on the dovetails that were between the joinings staples and bolts as fasteners, and over the joinings he placed projections, and below the staples and the bolts he made garlands hanging down. There were 4 wheels of bronze, to each pediment, and axles of bronze, and 4 centered axle boxes to fit the axles into. He cast each with a wreath and an opening from the inner side of the naves which projected for a cubit, and he made the circumference of the mouth a cubit and a half, and also coverings over the mouth with square indents, not round ones. And the 4 wheels were beneath the indents, with clutches on the wheels, with cogs, and the lever for each wheel was a cubit and a half long. And he made the wheels in the form of a chariot wheel, with spokes, and bosses, and poles, and naves, and the whole cast, with 4 jambs on the 4 shoulders of the bearings, 1 from each base of a shoulder. And at the top of the bearing, a round ring half a cubit high, and above the bearing levers, and cog wheels, with counter cogs, the levers projecting from lock holes, and above as a finish, cherubs, and lions, and palms, and surrounding wreaths. Thus he made the bases of the same form and shape, and the wheels of one form. He also made 10 lavers of brass, of 40 baths capacity each laver. Each laver was 4 cubits. Each laver was upon a single base of the 10 bases. The bases were placed 5 on the right side of the house, and 5 on its left. But the tank C was placed at the right side of the house towards the east, fronting south. Hiram also made the sprinklers, and the shovels, and the basins. Hiram thus completed all the furniture which King Solomon provided for the house of the ever-living. The 2 columns and the wreathed crowns on the tops of the columns, and the 2 networks to cover their 2 wreaths of the crowns which were on the tops of the columns, with the 400 pomegranates for the 2 networks, 2 rows of pomegranates for each net, to cover the 2 wreaths of the crowns which were on the tops of the columns, and the 10 bases, and the 10 lavers upon the bases, and the 1 tank, and the 12 bullocks under the tank, and the boilers, and the forks, and the basins. The whole of the instruments of the hall that Hiram made for King Solomon for the house of the ever-living were of polished brass, and cast in the neighborhood of the Jordan for the king, in the clay land between Succoth and Sarthin. Solomon also made a very large amount of furniture, not calculating the value of the weight of the brass. Solomon besides made all the instruments of the house of the ever-living, the altar of gold, and the table of gold upon which was the showbread, and the 5 lamps on the right and the 5 on the left hand opposite the recess were pure gold, with their plates and reflectors, and snuffers of pure gold. And the fans, and psalteries, and pans, and the spoons, and tongs of refined gold. And the hinges of the doors of the house, over the entrance of the Holy of Holies, with the doors of the house of the temple, of gold. Thus was completed all the furniture that King Solomon made for the house of the ever-living, and Solomon brought the consecrated silver and gold of his father David, and the furniture he gave to the house of the ever-living. Typology 1. The whole of the instruments of the hall that Hiram made for King Solomon for the house of the ever-living were of polished brass. Instruments are the furniture, which are the 12 zodiacal signs, cast in brass. 2. Brass is Jupiter. Typology 1. Made like network, with clutches, and axles of bronze, and 4 centered axle boxes to fit the axles into, on the wheels, with cogs, on the 4 shoulders of the bearings, and above the bearing levers, and cog wheels, with counter cogs, the levers projecting from lock holes. 2. King Solomon Temple is nothing more than a giant working orrery, with axles, cogs, clutches, countercogs, bearings, wheels, locking levers, made of cast brass. King Solomon did not receive great knowledge from God, nor does Solomon genuinely have great wisdom on the motions of the stars. It is the orrery that is King Solomon's wisdom, not God. And God gave to Solomon very great wisdom and understanding, and wide intelligence, like the sand on the seashore. For Solomon's scientific knowledge was more extensive than the science of all the Bani Kadem, and than all the science of the Mitzrayim. He knew more than all men, of the orbits, of the planets, of the origination of light, and fixed sustaining systems, and the results of the revolving spheres. Typology. 1. The hidden truth. King Solomon was never at all wise. King Solomon only appears to have great knowledge and wisdom, in the eyes of the 12 tribes of Israel, and King Solomon's knowledge is the orrery, of which a Phoenician king made for him. Because God never gave King Solomon anything, it was King Hiram who gave Solomon a temple, an orrery, and a pantheon of gods and a religion, which remained in Israel to the end of Christ. 2. Which is why King Solomon's demise had set in very quickly, and his personal life story, the time after the temple to his death, is cut very short, straight to, women are the problem and cause, and the reason why King Solomon built altars to other gods. As for 45 years of great wisdom and understanding, like sand on the seashore, well, there isn't any. Once King Solomon has his own working orrery, Solomon doesn't need God or gods. Solomon will see himself as a god, for being able to foresee the future of the planetary, sun, and moon movements himself. 3. The secret truth. The Phoenician king, King Hiram, who was not challenged by God, and God also had approved the construction of the pagan temple. King Hiram, he came to King Solomon, and designed all his works, and only agreed to build Solomon his magnificent temple, and the grandeur and illusion of great power, and great wisdom, providing at King Hiram's time and expense, that King Solomon imports the Phoenician gods, and its religion, Moloch, Baal, and Astaroth, and bring them into Israel and worship them. Which was the whole purpose and point of the Temple of Solomon, to teach the negative side of astrology,